favorites were KT Rolster.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Week 2 of 2019 LCK Spring. I'm Atlas, of course, joined by Papa Smithy. And we're here. It's a bit of a topsy-turvy league so far, though, Chris. And if we go back to Week 1, a whole lot of the unexpected happened.
And we get to go back to Week 1 in the best way possible because we have the weirdest yet most fitting schedule of all time. I tweeted about this yesterday. There's no way this was intentional. It's better than intentional. Somehow, through a quirk of the system, all schedule is done before the season starts. In week number 2, we only have 2-0 team versus 2-0 team, 0-2 team versus 0-2 team. Suddenly, what was, half of the teams at 2-0, the other half at 0-2, is now going to be a much more refined, a much more fleshed out schedule by the end of week 2.
Yeah, we're not going to be seeing all of these 1s in the first column and the 7s in the next column. Of course, Home Life Esports and KT, the only reason that they're sitting at 5th and 6th is because they dropped one map. Otherwise, everything else was 2-0s and 0-2s. Kingzone, Afrika, Jinair, and Gen.G all without a win just yet. And KT versus Kingzone will be our first matchup, so there's a chance for Kingzone to try and get their way to the middle of the pack.
And amusingly, every day we have a 2-0 versus 2-0
yeah.
and a 0-2 versus 0-2. So only good days here in LCK Spring 2019, week number 2. If you ask me the question of who will be at the top of the 5 teams at 2-0, again, you just gravitate towards the big names. Speaking of big names, Tarzan, yet to go a match without winning the MVP. Now, Ning has set the line. The line is at 5. That was his record over an LPL Spring. He opened the week with one MVP, but not the Game 2 MVP. Rookie stole that one away. So if Tarzan can get a double MVP to go to 6 games in a row, that's the only way to outdo the World Championship MVP.
Yep, so that's going to be the MVPs. But now, champion pick ban, there have been a lot of 100% ban pick champions. This list actually continues on, but Urgot at 100% pick and ban, but he's been picked 15 times with an 83% win rate.
That's why I'm sneering, Atlas. 13-2 for a champion that is so frequently first picked. It's just disgusting. Speaking of disgusting, no one gets to play Aurelia until she's changed.
And no one gets to play her unless they're not an Aurelia player, which is why she's 0% win rate
I
right
can
now.
play all the Aurelia he wants.
Unless you're a Gen.G fan, in which case you don't want him to play
No,
Aurelia,
you don't.
guys.
You didn't want to see the Aatrox from Crown at Worlds either, but with Gen.G, they're looking for their fortunes to change. No Gen.G for today. Still LOL Park. That part will not be changing. A matchup that is steeped in history, that was one of the must-watch games, now feels like relegation fodder. Unless KT Rolster or Kingzone can win a decisive match, maybe they're both condemned to be fighting down the bottom of the league.
And of course, I mean, Kingzone always seemed to have KT's number in 2018, 2017 as well. Certainly was the Kingzone hype train when it came to this matchup, but now they're sharing KT players from last year. The rosters are completely different. None of what we learned in 2018 matters here.
And you know that I'm someone that loves to sell something. SKT versus Griffin, so hyped, 31st of January.
Yeah.
I can't sell you 2018 Summer Champions versus 2018 Spring Champions. Could this be any more meaningless?
Yeah.
This particular attitude, the rosters have changed. There's a hodgepodge between the two, and both are coming off very poor weeks for them. Look at these stats here. You're lucky to get a 5th place stat, and also the 5th place stats for Kingzone don't even feel legitimate. These are two teams without any form, and they need to find some starting today.
That's exactly right. KT Rolster still having a decent early game, much like you'd expect from this team in 2018, even though a lot of the names have changed, still able to pick up first blood in every single game they've been in so far, but that doesn't mean anything at the end of the day if you're sitting at 1-4 map score.
100% first blood rating for KT Rolster, and to Kingzone's credit, the 2 games against Griffin, they got first blood.
They did.
The bot lane first blood, surprising Viper, was a very few and far between highlight for Kingzone DragonX. I think KT come in favorites mostly because you look at the roster and like, yeah, with more of their players. But what does it mean in practice? Hanwha Life have already shown, doesn't really matter what your nameplates are. If you can play impressively, you can take down anyone.
Exactly, and we're seeing some of the highlights of what Kingzone did well and now what KT did well. It's a little bit difficult to find, but honestly, Zenit did have a decent game. Haven't actually seen the rosters just yet, but this was some impressive Sivir in their debut match of the season.
KT Rolster, again, the first game where the top side of the map could carry hard enough, they went over, but the issue was we saw a good early game from them in their next series, and it wasn't enough. The top side need to do some impressive stuff, and top versus bot side is really where the bread is buttered on paper, because this is that first blood.
Yeah.
That one rare good moment for Kingzone. Deft and Tucson versus the World, Smeb, Score, and BDD versus the World. And good news for fans of Smeb, he will be starting game number 1 after watching on as his team lost 2-0 at the end of last week.
Yeah, his first series that he hasn't actually played in whilst being on a team. You told everyone about this when it happened, and these are different times, troubling times for a lot of KT fans, but now with Smeb back on the roster, might mean good things for KT Rolster, but I just don't think we know enough about how these two teams are going to function. So we're having a look, Deft versus Score. I find this graph just in general is so weird. I'm like, why are we just looking at KT? That's not actually the case anymore.
Nope, the jerseys are different, the nameplates are different, and the match score is certainly up there as well. Score had a really good game number 1, but then hasn't been able to be the same tonic for KT victories he was in the past. Deft is what we all knew this roster would be about when we saw Kingzone DragonX's 5-man, now 6-man roster with Neon coming into the sub role of, well, if Deft doesn't hard carry, can they find someone else? Seems like both those prepositions need to be re-examined. Kills per game, low on both, GPM low. But the kill participation score of 85% from the jungle here from Score shows that if he gets it done, that's really the only way to get it done.
Yep, exactly right. And Score really did look like a bit of a passenger on the Xin Zhao. Didn't have a great Camille game as well, but his Gragas in that first game was fantastic. Even able to get some things done on the Sejuani when he tried his hand. So probably looking for those tank junglers for Score. And if you look over the other side, Def just needs to try and get out of Teddy territory. I mean, he's 2018 Teddy right now, and he wants to be a little bit better than that this time around. We're going to introduce KT Rolster first, though. You can see Gango and Snowflower will be your bottom lane. So Zenit and Mia will be stepping aside. Score there as well, of course. And Smeb makes his way back to the top lane.
When you're in the dugout like this, like the football-style entrances, you want to be badass. You want to make a pose, but it's hard to make a pose when you don't have a match victory, Atlas, and that's why everyone here, a bit of nervous smiles on the side of KT. Let's see if they can live up to their reputations, if they can have a long-awaited re-debut. Maybe they can throw out week number 1 and make week number 2 all about KT Rolster. They're wearing their new jackets, which are for sale, but again, advertising easier when you got a match victory, so
damn right.
They bow to the crowd. It's still a really good crowd in spite of it being 0-2 against 0-2.
Well, these teams still have so many fans. These
For
are
sure.
still the big names in the LCK, and we're only 1 week in. There's certainly an opportunity for these guys to completely turn things around. However, once you get into week 3, week 4, if nothing's changed, that's when you really start to ring the warning bells. But now we're going to be introducing Kingzone, DragonX, Rascal, and Cuz. Both of them been on this roster for so long, but never really as starters. Pawn, Deft, and Tucson wanting to turn around their fortunes as well. And Akon, big smile on his face actually, looking confident. Wasn't actually their drafting coach last time we saw them, but will be back by the looks of things.
And that's what I want to see, because actually it was Hirai behind him now, more of the head coach who was on stage for that second match. Would love to have an interview with either Akon or Hirai to understand that, because I've never seen Hirai on stage as the one coach before. Akon's got the big notebook. It seems like it's been reinforced. More papers in it this time than before.
Yeah. Well, maybe that means that they've been practicing harder, getting things worked out for themselves. I couldn't find Pawn's OPGG account, so maybe he's been in the hyperbolic time chamber trying to level up because, my God, he needed to.
And both teams do. KT Rolster, Smeb Score, BDD, Gango, and Snowfile. First time they started this roster because Smeb was not playing in the last series, and Gango was not playing in their first series. Gango probably going to be a bit more reticent to lock in that Callista after being exploded on site against Damwon Gaming. And I'm going to be looking to the mid lane because even though KT talked about how this was a Smeb-focused roster, I think BDD was their main acquisition, just like Gen G were all about Peanut. BDD needs to perform today because he looked a bit more like a passenger in their last 2-0 loss.
And if you have a look at the form that Pawn's in as we bring up the Kingzone lineup, you could imagine that that is certainly a place that KT can punch through, because Pawn has not looked very good at all, making the old Pawn mistakes, things like that. We know what he's capable of, but we just haven't seen it in the foreseeable past, honestly. There just really aren't very many examples of Pawn being the same powerhouse that we saw back in 2014, 2015.
And if they can get Tucson on a disengage, or if they can get that Draven, in fact, you have to ban Draven. I think a first-round Draven ban has to come out from Kingzone. Otherwise, they can just copy what we saw last time. Just take the strongest possible 2v2, and so far Kingzone haven't had any way to win.
Nope, it just hasn't been a way to get around it. And Deft does feel like the new Teddy, because he's been playing very well in lane. Him and Tucson seem to have built up synergy more quickly than we would have otherwise assumed they could. And that's looked great, but that is literally the end of the good news and the beginning at the same time, as Pick and Ban is upon us already.
We zoom out to patch 9.1. 9.2 not live in Korea just yet, and of course we have a week before patches could even be considered here, so we'll see what happens in week number 3 for the entire week 2, which runs from today, Wednesday, until Sunday. We patch 9.1, no champions disabled, only champion banned so far, and we were discussing this. Rakan is certainly jumping way up. It's first round on either the blue or red side. Now it's a first round ban. Teams have had a couple of days off. We have Communal Monday, Tuesday as the break for players. I'm sure there was some scrims there. Let's see how the scrim meta translates to stage, because usually whenever we hit the first day of a week, the priorities in terms of what's slipping to first pick and what's a first ban change pretty dramatically.
Absolutely, and we've got Galio actually banned away here. Urgot, of course, the obvious first pick here for KT if they want to take it. Smeb's fantastic on the Urgot, demonstrated that in Kesper Cup and in the past.
13-2 also.
Yeah,
for a first pick
busted.
champion is a busted win rate. But while Lucian can be strong, is that going to be the first pick here? KT will first pick Lucian. There is no Draven ban, and yet they will still go for the first pick Lucian here. So Gango, ostensibly, again, Lucian can be flexed. Plenty of people playing it in top and mid lane, depending on the opponent. Usually a Galio pick when we sit in the LCK. Lucian over Urgot with a Draven player is curious. So let's see how KT back this one up. Maybe they just have a read on what they want to pick as a 5-man comp.
Yeah, and maybe they were scared of the third round pick here for Kingzone. Could be something like the Lucian themselves, but the Ashe is going to come out. That's going to be the answer here from Deft, going back to a very old favorite for this guy and giving him a bit of the prey treatment. Kingzone certainly knows how to play around an Ashe.
Well, we need a Season 1 Ashe player because we've lost them. Atlas, we don't have.
It's only Sungyun that's played it so far.
But the weird thing is we don't have the god tier Ashes of Bang and Prey. They were the ones who you could always trust, and Prey's Ashe arrow accuracy. Always going to be something to be ecstatic about. Deft has played it in and out of meta, but certainly isn't respected the same level with the arrow at least. Perhaps he can rewrite that with some of his peers removed.
Deft was
Speaking
more
of
of a
peers,
teamfight Ashe player.
Urgot's peer in Sion is going to be locked in as an answer to just kind of laying against Sion wherever possible. And yeah, I agree with you. His Ezreal is usually the one we get excited about. We saw it in Kesper Cup. They couldn't play the macro around the Ezreal to get any value out of it in Kesper Cup, and they haven't returned to it so far when it's come to LCK Spring 2019.
Well, Snowflower is going to lock away the Thresh, so the Wife Steal bottom lane looks to be coming in. Of course, still able to get that flexibility if they want to move the Lucian around, but Snowflower is certainly a big favorite for him.
He's a real legendary Thresh player as well. If you remember back to when Rebels Anarchy debuted, Mickey and Snowflower took all the bans, Zed Twisted Fate against Mickey, and then just ban away Thresh, and there was no threat from the bot lane. Snowflower's ability to make plays and roam on the Thresh need to be talked about. It's his first game on the season.
Yeah, and that's the Freljordian bottom lane locked in here for Kingzone. So an old favorite, most definitely, and certainly with a lot of 2v2 power. And CC coming out of Kingzone. I always look at Deft's name and I want to say KT, but it's 2019 now and it's all changed. Ryze and LeBlanc to be banned away in our first round as we have a look at the mid lane mostly.
It's new, isn't it? The LeBlanc
Really
priority.
is.
We understood the bans against Lava because he got to show in game number 2 how he can make it work. The reason why LeBlanc is so unique is it's the only non-flex pick mid laner that's being banned. It's a champion that feels so risky to pick because everyone else can go everywhere on the map, but LeBlanc goes mid, and oh, did it go well for Lava. So
And
love
also,
how we have finally a champion who is honest in their role. They're not this duplicitous solo lane wherever I go.
Exactly, and also Kingzone are on the red side, and you could last counterpick that one for Pawn, and was probably the last champion that I saw Pawn be impressive on. To be perfectly honest, he was doing some real funny business in the enemy base, taking inhibitors and just being deceiving in general.
I'm going to always remember Pawn for beating LeBlanc because, of course, the famous MSI 2015 final game as Morgana. Vladimir ban is a new one as well. Seeing a lot more Vladimir in solo queue after we saw Nogari pop off, and Viper, of course, will play it. So I think it's going to be a new trend. I've been practicing my Vladimir, and the results, well, positive LP gains are the results. Speaking of LP gains, we're going to see Pawn on Zoe. Neon came in and played the Zoe last time. Now we're going to see it from Pawn. See if he can actually remake his debut on the Zoe after being away from Zoe as a pick for quite a while.
And also will mean that we're going to be last picking for Cuz as well as Score. Hovering, something he's been practicing a lot in the Karthus.
This would be a
the
blind
Gragas is
pick.
already locked in.
Now, Cuz is not known for applying jungle pressure when it comes to
Here
competitiveness.
we go.
All right, we've got the Yasuo.
The old school counterpick to the Zoe.
And it's also the second round special. It's not a Camille Galio, but it's the same level of synergy here. Gragas from basically off the screen throws out a cask lazily, and then Yasuo says, thank you very much, and your breath stops. A last breath enabler here on three different picks on KT. A lot of synergy, and I think BDD wants to pop off on this Yasuo.
And now we've got the Olaf locked in as well. Of course, has been a pick that can work very, very well in this season. Bono, in fact, bringing it to a 15 KDA over his experiences for Hanwha Life Esports. But now it's Cuz gonna try his hand, and it was always Peanut that was the next level Olaf player for Kingzone, and now Cuz, of course, been sitting behind him for a long time. It's going to be him that brings it out this time.
And I hope this is the start of a trend for week number 2, because week 1 was flex mid laners, right? Aftershock abusers, tanks.
Yeah.
Now we have Zoe versus Yasuo, and it's also BDD saying, I didn't enjoy watching on as my team around me couldn't fire. I'm going to fire myself on the Yasuo. I can hit the side lanes. I have so much setup for the last breath. This is where BDD earns his paycheck. Let's see if he can have a big game against Kingzone DragonX, his former squad.
Yep, coaches are going to shake hands, and there was recently an interview with Rookie actually talking about that Yasuo mid lane, saying that you need to have a hell of a lot of games before you can do anything relevant on the champion, and he's difficult to win with. We'll see whether KT can make it work this time.
There was an even better interview with Doyenby who said, don't play that champion. Well, BDD's disregarding LPL advice and trying to make it a thing in LCK.
I like
and
how we talk about...
we get to watch on and appreciate why.
Yep, LPL advice from 2 Koreans, which is absolutely brilliant. Going over the Kingzone roster, I'm interested to see what Pawn can make work here on the Zoe. Haven't seen him play it thus far in his competitive career, but of course has been smashing solo queue. It's why he was a hot commodity to come onto Kingzone in the off-season.
Played a bit of it at the start of spring before he was overtaken by UCAL, but it's been a while, Atlas, and it's been a while before these two teams had much to cheer about. Well,
you can see KT certainly still has the big name when it comes to the fan cheers. can see the teams already. Kingzone actually grouped as 5, looking to put some pressure on to KT in the early stages of the game. And when you got a Braum, certainly is something that you'd want to do. Championship Thresh there, going to get tagged by the Winter's Bite. But just going to be able to get some deep vision down. Score actually not opting in to go and get some wards on the red just yet.
There is that Yasuo, no skin necessary. BDD making this game all about him. Such as Yasuo, we've all played solo queue.
Yep.
It's always about the Yasuo, whether on your team, the enemy team, whether they're winning or losing. They dominate the conversation. So let's see if he can hit the Rift aggressively, because it will take time for Score and BDD to actually be a respectable 2v2. You're more thinking about post-level 6 for Gragas, for the actual 2v2 to go the way of KT.
And also, I really love that this Olaf was picked up, because one of the reasons why the Olaf was strong, because he was playing it into Score. Bono was actually the one that was able to get the jump on Score, and challenging him in the early game seemed to be a really good way of taking KT down and removing their biggest weapon, which is Score and his control around the map.
And good news, BDD and Pawn will have a weapon, one of them, by the end of this game, because BDD, even though he plays a lot of Yasuo and solo queue 0-3 on Yasuo, and Pawn with a good KDA 0-2 on the Zoe. So someone has to win when it comes to match score, when it comes to mid lane matchup. Hopefully the results will be explosive.
Well, I mean, one of these teams also has to win a series in 2019 as well, so the good news will certainly be there for one of our squads, and the 0-3 news will be there for another one.
What Thresh skin? Is this a new chroma?
Is that the Championship Thresh?
It doesn't look like how I remember it looking.
Yeah.
There's definitely not Samsung White going on here, but
No.
Snowflower, we always defer to him on all matters Thresh. Opening up in the 2v2. Now, Ashe has chosen into Lucian because of the amount of outranging you can actually poke back. You don't want to take the full press of the attack trade, but you just want to poke as much as possible. And also to allow Cuz to do his thing, because from level 2 onwards, Cuz invades, and while he's spotted on a ward, they should overall have much more information about Gragas' path than is available on Olaf's.
And you can see Rascal already moving down just to try and see where the Score is going for that Rift Scuttler. Was a little bit off time, but you can see that Kingzone do want to make sure that Score doesn't have much leeway around this jungle. I actually really do like the Ashe here in the laning phase. Up against the Lucian, she's always been pretty good just at laning in general, with that volley spam that you can just throw out and make sure that your opponent is harassed. Score, a little bit upset that there's no red buff here, so most likely going to get 3 buffed because he chose the wrong big buff to go for, as the blue is the only one still standing here on the
And Rascal and the side of Kingzone, I think, are pretty ahead of this. Now they have, of course, the map hacks and the Superior level 1 in order to know Score's path. Score is on a Predator jungler, so remember, has no keystone until he backs and gets boots. So you're always in a weird spot here trying to halve as many camps as possible in a jungle skirmishing disadvantage. And you like Zoe and Olaf proactively. Given how much time Olaf's been on the enemy side of the jungle, proactive is certainly from the start of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like they've traded sides of the jungle, actually, as Score is going to do basically a full clear around the empty red buff pit. So he will still be certainly up there when it comes to the camps, but just not quite as many buffs to be taken here from the jungle Gragas.
Pawn is very far down the lane, but should again know that Score is above him. See what he opts into here, because he's being relentlessly aggressive, and I do like to see the aggressive streak out of Pawn and Cuz so far in this game, because Kingzone definitely had some issues around that. Speaking of aggression.
Yeah, in a whole lot of trouble. There's the corrosive charge, and Rascal able to get the last auto attack. Can he get in there? No, he can't. The flash away from Smeb, but that is dominance from Rascal here in this lane.
It's also a really poor map read from Smeb to be that far up, and just in general not have the health bar to support it. Basically feels like a free flash, an unforced error when it comes to lane spacing from Smeb. I guess he wants to the push. He wanted the shove back, but in the end, he gives up his summoner.
Yeah, and unforced errors was something we were talking about, and you sort of coined last year. It wasn't something that we've often spoken about when we're referencing Smeb and his play. He's just not one to do that. Khan maybe certainly has times where he goes overly aggressive, maybe plays a little bit arrogant, but Smeb often cool-headed. Very, very strange to see that one as BDD trying to get aggressive here up against Pawn, but Pawn's going to use basically the last of his mana and shoots him with his Super Soaker. Honestly,
2018 was a pretty weird year for Smeb. If you remember, in spring, he was playing tanks like Maokai way out of meta because he was transitioning to the shot caller role of KT Rolster as he became the true captain after it was more of a shared responsibility in 2017. And then come summer, he had some great moments, but in general, I think it was defined by his individual play falling away for his team play to be really accentuated. And look, at the end of the day, they were summer champions, but it wasn't with Smeb being impressive. Now Smeb, at times shouldering more responsibility, is finding it hard to shift between identities, and his ability to match tanks with carries were the dominant story about him and his rise to that superstardom in the top.
Yeah. Well, it still has an opportunity. Of course, that's just a flash on cooldown. He's 5 CS behind. Nothing to worry about here up against the Urgot. So far, the Cuz is continuing to just obliterate Score's jungle. Lots of vision here around the top side of the map as well, which is exactly where they want it. Given the fact that Smeb is the one without a flash. There's the flash into Stain. There to bring Smeb further back into the lane, and I have a feeling he's not going anywhere. Cuz picks up his axe, and he's going to continue slowing down this Scion. He'll be able to take care of some minions, but that is first blood going to Kingzone, and the first that KT has missed out on.
Legit no counterplay, and love that Cuz in the right place at the right time. Rascal gives him the call and says he's got no summoners, no ultimate, no chance. Goes in with the flash there, no way out with the perma-slow from Cuz. Clean stuff, and they don't even have to use the Predator from Cuz to make it happen.
Yeah, I also want to have people go back and look at the early game and the pathing that Cuz chose, because he basically obliterated exactly what he wanted to in Score's jungle, gave nothing away himself, and now has a big camp lead to the tune of about 3 camps, as we're going to see this one yet again. It's just beautiful jungling so far from Cuz, and this was too easy.
And that's all about Cuz, like you say, responding to the matchup and being very proactive about what camps he took. But when it comes to the gank, and something we criticized Cuz for last week is being a reactive jungler when it comes to ganks, he also had the freebie to cash in on. It's almost like he got the invite for a gank, rather than necessarily had to be proactive, because it's a summoner advantage. There's no way out for Smeb. Gank in the end was easy, but overall Cuz had a strong game.
He has. So far it's more about the pathing, and like you say, not necessarily trying to dictate the pace of the game with his aggression against the lanes. We'll see whether he can improve on that as the game goes on. So far, 1,000 gold is going to be the lead here for Kingzone as Smeb makes his way back up top, but that vision control still certainly there for Kingzone, and this Scion is going to be on the back foot from now on, despite the parity in the CS margin.
You have to be careful with kind of inspecting the team comps here, because Kingzone have very superior siege to KT. KT just have very reliable ways to start a team fight, and if you hit your item timings, then yes, you look at Gragasol, you look at Scion flying in, even Snowflower can set up a really big multi-man last breath, and that can punish a siege attempt from Kingzone. But I feel like if there is any significant lead here, and that all-in is a failure of launching, or for example Yasuo is split pushing to try to force 1-3-1, there's a lot of ways that Kingzone get a big turret lead, and maybe all of the synergy on KT's side is 4-0. So you have to be very careful here to not fall too far behind as KT, even though at 2 items, you do like them in a straight-up 5v5.
Yeah, and I feel like if Kingzone continue with this momentum that they've picked up from the jungle of what Cuz has been able to put together, which is another reason why the Olaf is such a great pick, their pick potential and CC lockdown on a single target is just ridiculous. So pick and siege, the quintessential composition here for Kingzone, very, very different from what KT want to do, but it's likely that KT just can't have the team fight that you're talking about.
And you wonder what you do in terms of itemization to make KT's comp more reliable. Do you go Iceborne Gauntlet to actually force 1-3-1 against Urgot, or do you just go for Righteous Glory Sword style and start running at people? There's 2 different schools of thought, and how to play that matchup and how Smeb chooses it should also inform how they choose to play out the game.
Well, we'll see whether he does decide to go for a little bit more of a team fight idea, which I would assume is something that he'd want to do. Smeb does like to sort of pick up his top lane if it's not going so well and just move any CC that he has into a different lane.
And it would also fit with Smeb's I'm more of a shot caller rather than a carry impetus that he's been on recently. So playing to your items is something we've been talking about a bit more this season, because it can be so important with how many different carries there can be on the Rift and how much skirmishing there is early. Speaking of skirmishing, BDD and Pawn, the standard melee range man fight between Yasuo and Zoe.
Yep. And the exhaust just picked up off the ground as well, so that's no summoners down. As Kingzone, they had the bottom wave push, they had vision all through the bottom side jungle. A very, very controlled dragon to be taken. And the first is going to go over to them, so Infernal Drake picked up. And I think it's mostly off the back of Cuz just being good, and Score once again going to make a mistake and has to use the flash. As Rascal has the ultimate down on him, but not going to go under the threshold. So Hillbilly Gragas is going to go back home empty-handed.
And Hillbilly Gragas, the famous skin that we always see picked up by Score, needs to do some work, and no flash is going to be there, or even the cast for the next foreseeable future. Very, very annoying for Yasuo to deal with the Zoe. Same with Zed versus Zoe, just because the portal jump actually means you lose autos on a lot of your combos, whether it's the Death Mark or the Last Breath. You're very unlikely to get the extra 3 autos or so that you usually weave in because of that. Surprisingly, limber in these sort of matchups, despite usually struggling against assassins, is the Zoe.
Yeah, and the Wind Wall has such incredible power in this matchup, which is why Yasuo was sort of a favored pick on something that people like to pick into the Zoe when she was dominating the mid lane meta. But like you say, the portal jump does make it a little bit different and does turn it into a bit of a wash, which is why you can see they're just farming out against one another. Very, very even here in the mid lane.
I mean, no real numbers to talk about. I guess the only meaningful CS lead is jungle 2 caps, which lets you know not too much has happened.
Big catch-up, actually, for Score as he's been able to get around while Cuz has been looking for ganks. But a lot of vision is what Kingzone have invested into. The Dragon going down as well is certainly good news for them. Shelly being considered, as this Rift Scuttler is now being shepherded by Smith.
A lot of this is about shopping timings, both Zoe and Ashe. Freshly shopped and walking up.
Blade of the Ruined King done, and Zhonya's Hourglass also completed here for Pawn.
Basically, KT should be vacating objectives until they hit 2 items, though, or until they feel teamfight ready, because, again, what we talked about with KT is synergies, right? 2-bit, 3-bit combos, or they lose. Just like, well, they need a team fight with the right initiation, otherwise the enemy comp has siege, wave clear, etc. That should mean that when it comes to objectives with Kingzone in a lead, Kingzone should be first to set up. KT should be reacting. KT need to navigate to times where KT aren't in position. So because of all of that, Kingzone move forward. They take the second big objective. Infernal and Rift Herald are really nice pickups for 11 minutes 50, and we'll see if a pre-14-minute charge can mean that the gold lead balloons for Kingzone from that Rift Herald turret plating interaction.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that Cuz didn't pull the trigger almost immediately there. That would have been a lot of turret plating to go down, as we've only got 2 minutes left before that is going to drop. Gango here on the bottom side of the map will meet Rascal, as Shelly finally does come down as the minion wave is set up just nicely, and Deft is going to get delivered so much of this plate gold.
Very reminiscent of how Kingzone were playing in the Kesper Cup.
That was about 500 gold. That's just ridiculous to score with the defensive ult trying to get Rascal out of the way, who's just been the bane of his existence as he tries to get some of these camps back, and Deft is looking to try and take down this turret right now.
It's so funny he can push back Shelly there with the Roar of the Slayer.
Yeah.
Shelly actually loses autos. That might actually mean the turret lasts a couple of seconds longer, which you'll take in any case. Speaking of turrets lasting a while, this one's being wailed away upon.
Yeah, Score actually decides against it here as Smeb finds Cuz in his lane. Tusin's going to turn up as well, but I think the minion wave is enough to block any Winter's Bites. The Kingzone looking like they want to continue pushing, or at least crash this wave into the turret.
Very reminiscent again of Kesper Cup. 2 games in a row, and their 2 losses, they did this strategy of giving Deft the entire gold on Ezreal. This time he's on Ashe, but 2-item Ashe, get a Hurricane in there.
Dude.
And if you fail that first engage from KT, Hurricane Ashe is going to be pretty unanswerable. This is something that Kingzone, we talked about as a very Deft-focused lineup on paper. It's no surprise they're trying to give solo Rift Herald gold. When it comes to turret plates to Deft, this was nerfed on patch 9.1, but they still were able to navigate enough members away to give Deft all the gold. Wielding Deft as a weapon is something they couldn't do in Kesper Cup. Let's see if they can do it better in LCK Spring.
And nor were they able to do it in week 1 as well. Deft certainly looked like he was able to be a weapon, but just didn't quite get drawn out of the scabbard in any of their first matchups. This theoretically going to be an easier one, which is just such a weird thing to say when you're talking about KT. The Summer Champions. It's a very different roster now, though. Now that Deft has been unlocked and has so much extra gold, of course, goes back, buys himself a glove, a sword, and some pretty sweet-looking new boots. It's a lot of extra money now put into this Ashe. Can move her around. I want to see what the first arrow is going to bring us.
Now, the issue at Kesper Cup was Ezreal got all that gold bot lane, rotated first top with 2 items, and then just kind of farmed it out with the enemy AD carry top and never could wield the lead. They get the second turret, or the top turret fast enough, and finally, we had Ashe mid lane, potentially as a quarterback for moments like this. Ashe should be the winner here, but Pawn is pretty overextended.
Yeah, BDD going to easily be able to pick this one up. Zhonya's is going to go down, but there is nowhere that Pawn is going. Flashes actually, and has the heal, but it's a few extra buttons, and he is taken down, and that means KT has all the control here of this river.
And being too far down a side lane, not where Zoe usually thrives, actually undoes a lot of the good work from Deft and co on the side of Kingzone. Now they're out of position, and Deft's trying to wave clear. They don't have first access on trying this Drake in spite of all the wards. Chasing here is Deft.
Yeah, Blade of the Ruined King comes down. Oh, Winter's Bite's going to be flashed here from BDD. Kingzone do save their bottom outer turret. Cuz waiting in the wings here as well, as Score is just trying to shepherd the Yasuo, which is something that we're expecting to see a lot here this game just because of their synergy with the ultimates.
But only at this moment in the game, when you've got a Phantom Dancer no more, can Ashe enter lane confidently against a Yasuo. And you're losing out on timings from pawn being picked up. It's not so much about the gold that goes into the pockets of score, but more about the fact that they went to all the trouble of setting up vision around Drake and then couldn't take the Drake, and that's delayed the game by 2 or 3 minutes. That is some farming phase for KT they're being granted from a mistake from pawn. So we'll see if Kingzone can take this Drake in a timely manner. They're all about getting the most of the advantage in the early game while they can get it.
Yep, it's just looked all too easy. Score just waddles his way forward. And the portal jump, like you say, the interaction's a little bit frustrating, but you know exactly where he's going back, so that body slam was free, and Score just bops him on the face with an explosive cast.
Flash was really optimistic as well. Very far away from Tucson there, who wasn't going to be able to salvage anything. Still Kingzone 2 minutes later, do pick up that Drake. They're trying to keep KT away from mid lane here, and mid lane turret will be a nice little 1-2 combo.
Yeah, Trouble Bubble's going to stop Smeb from getting there in time to charge up this decimating smash, so that does mean that the tower is traded for the bottom outer. BDD getting some side lane work done as Yasuo is wont to do, but breaking open the mid lane is certainly what Kingzone wants to do.
Kingzone happy to continue trading up when Yasuo's not grouped, because suddenly Gragas ult's looking a lot less of a weapon because there's no last breath synergy. So you're very happy to fight away from BDD, and you don't even have the W from the Yasuo there to catch an arrow if someone strides out of position.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, making the map more open is something that Kingzone wants to do. They want to be able to get these picks. They want the map as dark as possible so they can set up these plays. Of course, it will largely be around Deft and landing that arrow to get that pick off. Trouble Bubbles as well will be helping if Pawn can keep himself alive.
And I wondered where BDD would go with the build. We've talked already in the early game about playing to your items. People want to mainline Infinity Edge as Yasuo because of the synergies, but you just pop in a team fight if you go for it. If you actually build BF Sword here and finish an Infinity Edge, because there's a Guardian Angel to be considered, then you're saying, I've got IE, I'm a side laner, no one can come near me. Instead, he's going Sterix, he's going for a team fight build to play into the fact that we said 2 items is when KT need to start grouping and need to start forcing.
Yeah, and it's going to be about team fights as well for this squad. You already told us exactly what this comp is good at, and they are good at causing a lot of ruckus in a team fight. And there's a hell of a lot of stopwatches on that side, indicating that to me right there, Papa. Thank you very much for that. But
4 stopwatches means
unused.
We're fighting, and maybe a little bit earlier than we originally planned, because we need to start winning team fights, because a lot of gold spent on that, or a rune spot, depending. Bot side, Smeb, he didn't go Iceborne Gauntlet, so pretty painful his lane.
Yep. Does at least have his first item, so that is good news, but this ain't, as there's the disdain. Rascal underneath the turret wants to land the ultimate. Hasn't used it just yet. Oh, and that's a really good stopwatch use. Won't have it for that team fight that we said was looming. And man, having to trade that big button for the ultimate is certainly not what you wanted to do as Smeb, but holds onto his flash, which is good.
He shorts the ultimate as well, so it didn't look like the most convincing disengage there on the Scion. Still some things to be worked out. Remember, it was Kingen playing both those games. You already mentioned it. First time in Smeb's career that he was not involved in a best-of series. Snowflower, because he's been behind the rotations of Deft and Tucson, he's never been able to make those great picks that he's known about on this Thresh. So already, you see the team fight comp trying to roll up for team fights and being out of position, and Rascal saying, thank you very much. I'll take an outer turret as fast as possible.
Well, it certainly has been Rascal that's able to hold on to what lead he's had. Still bullying Smeb, still ahead by a hell of a lot of farm. 35 is going to be that number, but we look elsewhere, and BDD is approaching a 20k lead. Rascal does get that turret, that is great, but look at the 30 CS that Gango's picked up over Deft in this sort of time off, this time where Kingzone have really taken their foot off the pedal.
And they have a diagonal line of control wards that Observer fortuitously is showing at the same time to show that KT really only owns the entrance to their most shallow camps. They don't own anything else. They have no vision at all in front, even in the river, not even a single ward. Nothing is put down because they understand how far behind in the early game they are. So hitting and hoping, you know, doing your best Babe Ruth impression of pointing to a team fight and saying this is where we hit the home run is really all KT can do right now, and it's going to be risky. They're trying it.
Yeah, in goes the train as Tucson's going to block it, tries to use the Unbreakable there as Pawn has to flash very early in this fight. BDD already exhausted as Tucson flashes away, and Deft way too far away, doesn't even land the arrow as it just sails by majestically. Knock up there onto Rascal. He's just going to get booped around, but no last breath available as that was used so early, and no one going to lose their lives.
The Despair actually overrode the ultimate coming in from Gragas, and he went to safety. That was very fortuitous. The hook goes wide here. KT didn't have enough vision to make this play reliably, and look at all the damage Snowflower was eating.
And this is fantastic. This is what Kingzone want to do. They want to fight to break out, lots of buttons on cooldown, and then Pawn picks people off with stray paddle stars and the trouble bubbles. It's always been what these Zoe comps have wanted to do. As that wasn't Pawn's real flash, just so you guys know.
That was an imitation fast. I always check. Someone's
Yeah,
like, wait,
me too. It
really?
always freaks me out.
Very optimistic there. Again, when we see the replay, consider how different this play is if you have river vision compared to where they have vision, because it ends up being a bit of an overforce because you have to, because they're like, this is the time, we have to fight now.
Yeah.
We're not going to go to it just yet, though, as there's a lot of looming sharks here. BDD. Visual bug for a moment there, but he's just going to be considering his options.
Walks over the control ward, and they now know that full information is given over to Kingzone. Most members actually towards the top side of the map as Smeb's just trying to claw his way back into the CS race up against Rascal. BDD shoving this wave forward. No one actually there to help him out, so he will be backing away, and Deft will continue to pick up what farm he can find. Runon's Hurricane just around the corner here for the Ash.
Really interesting interview published by Ashley Kang on Twitter today. ESPN interview with Damwon Gaming's mid laner, Showmaker, as the hook does hit here.
Yeah, Tucson going to get thrown back. Windwall not actually going to do too much. It's because throws his undertow right past, and you can go back to your story.
Yeah, the reason why I reference a interview with a player not playing this series is he was asked about the meta right now, and he said, well, when the established teams are playing, it goes back to old LCK slow meta. I see 2 kills at 21 minutes. I see a game that's been defined by safe farming and map control much more than actually about the skirmishes that Canyon, on Fleek, and the new generation are providing. So it is interesting how what he's talking about is actually coming into play quite a lot here. It does suit KT to a point, but not in terms of gold lead. KT have played the sort of game that would be a 2,000 gold disadvantage in the past. It's become a 5,000 with things like turret plating. And it makes you wonder if all this safe farming, where they look at the scoreboard and say, okay, we're not that far behind. They're actually more far behind than they would have been in the past. Will the team fight even work when they finally get one?
Exactly. You can see it's a 0-0-0 Ash with a bounty on top of her head. So behind 20 CS, and still you're the one with the bounty as opposed to your opponent. So reel me that one, everyone. It's all a bit confusing how it works, but it just means that he's been farming a lot and took so much money from those turret plates. Got an entire turret. First turret bonus gold of about 100 gold, but on top of that, about 600 for all those plates. Really crazy stuff.
They're pushing from behind on the Yasuo. Gets Yasuo farm, but loses you map objectives. That's the inner turret down. Doubling in turrets are Kingzone in the early game. They are definitely playing the more up-to-date style without necessarily aping what some of the best teams so far in Spring are doing. Push forward here. Score is clearing camps on a ward, and already you start wondering about things like Baron. On the side of Kingzone, they've got different people to tank Baron. They can have multiple smites. 3 smites can be put together if Unsealed Spellbook is moved, but unlike Sandbox Gaming, most teams aren't going to be moving to smite at 20 minutes, even if their Baron is good.
Yeah. There's not going to be much of that. The Dignitas Baron is now feeling like the Sandbox Baron as Paddle Star's thrown directly into a wind wall, but that's going to be dissipated relatively soon and on a relatively large cooldown. Not even half the health bar of the turret going to be taken here on this push from KT.
Smartly played by Pawn. You always portal jump to wave clear as the Zoe. Usually you're just fine to put that Paddle Star in there, but you portal jump in, so if Yasuo hits you with a Q, you're so far down, you're in your inner turret basically at that point. No last breath availability for BDD.
No, not going to be engaging on the Zoe.
So
not for now, at least.
Remember, 6,000 gold behind. Yasuo, because he's been kind of selfishly hitting the side lane, KT said, let's get 2-3 items on Yasuo. He's ahead in gold. It's elsewhere where the advantage is pretty significant on the side of Kingzone. So Yasuo has 2 items. They are teamfight items because he's gone for Sterix. But right now, no ability to wield a teamfight by KT.
Yep, Luden's Echo now completed as well for Pawn, so he's got a lot of CDR and certainly a lot of burst damage available, and you mentioned having that wave clear that you can utilize. Luden's Echo going to help him out there as well, which means that this tower is likely to survive for a little bit longer than you'd otherwise expect. In the mid lane, Gango turns up, Snowflower there beside him, but they've got a wave to deal with. Nothing else that they can really look at.
So we look at 25 minutes and say Kingzone have played way better than expected. This is a really good early game from them, but they had some good early game moments in the Kesper Cup. It's finding a match victory. You can't leave this game 5,000 gold lead at 35 minutes. Then the game is only about Barons and Elder Dragons, and you will be out-comped pretty reliably here. Rascal walks up. This could be a mistake.
Yeah, he's going to get hooked there as well into the box. Trouble Bubble comes down and he has to use his stopwatch, but no one is close enough. The flash is going to be utilized to stain, and the heal's going to keep him alive, and now Cuz finds himself right in the middle of the thick of it. Has to flash to get his way out. In fact, everyone is flashing. Tucson is going to be the one that has the most trouble, but Stand Beside Me is off cooldown. Party Cast going to come in. That's Smeb with a 3-man knockup, but they're just putting the right people forward. Arrow is going to land. The slows are good, but another hook is going to come in, and Gango grabs the first kill of this very extended fight. Pawn does have the stopwatch, but it's not enough. Zonya's Hourglass now on cooldown, but his life is forfeit, and BDD still looking for more King Zone, just botching it.
BDD so close to a Last Breath. The flash Q just out of range of Last Breath for BDD, even after the buff a few patches ago. They aren't able to kill the kills, but man, the dominoes, they fall one by one, Atlas.
Yeah.
So clear was it that one mistake, Rascal looking for a flank and being caught, led to so many people out of position. It's a summoner atrocity. All the summoners basically down on Kingzone DragonX purely because of one poor flank.
Yep, not a flash remains on this squad, and that was one hell of a mistake as Rascal just walks up.
He cycles his summoner there and then would have appreciated the extra health. Count how many hooks. Now, they're not super exciting hooks, but so many hooks in a row. Continue this on for way longer than Kingzone would have liked. First hook we saw hit. We continue on from this play. Cuz is overextended because Rascal was overextended, and then now Tucson is overextended,
and then
trying to buy time. Smeb, once he had the flash Q and watched BD's position, he's maybe 100 units short of the Last Breath. It's almost an entire screen length when it comes to a 3-man stun there in the air, and maybe they all fall down. They chase on for further kills here. More hooks, more kills, but not the multi-man Last Breath that would have maybe got KT Rolster a Baron.
Yep, that would have been instantly 3 kills if he was able to get on top of where Smeb was, but doesn't happen. Snowflower misses that hook there as well.
And that's Kingzone returning to Kesper Cup, where they had good early games and then started to make mistakes. Kingzone pushing out.
In trouble, walks around the wind wall this time, and they get the Glacial Fissure, but into the back line. That's the 3-man knock-up. So much damage comes in as BDD just locks them all away. Pawn decimated, and KT get that team fight.
They get on the second time. One mulligan straight into it. Smeb sets up the multi-man stun, I believe, at the start of that, and Last Breath does the rest. All the free farm, now the grouping, and suddenly gold parity and probably a Baron for KT.
Yep, and Rascal is now trying to just lumber after BDD, and the Baron has already been started. Nothing that Rascal can actually do. There's 4 are dead on the side of Kingzone. They're not going to be able to make it towards this big purple worm, and KT turn it into a 7-2 kill game. They're still 3,000 gold behind, but they can catch up now. There's so much standing gold on this map.
And I can't even isolate which of the obvious team-wide knockups it was that started the party. But it's all about BDD closing the party. 006 Secret Agent Yasuo. He hasn't died in 28 minutes. This is some next-level Yasuo play.
That is not the
replay.
Yasuo that I've seen in my games.
We need to see the replay to see which of the knockups it was, because it looked on my first viewing like Smeb went wide, but then suddenly Yasuo's in the air and he's not jumping for glee.
I think Score may have landed a barrel.
Let's watch the replay here so they know W's on cooldown to start, and it was Smeb at the back there that opens it up. 2 people die instantly. This is pre, i.e. this is pre the ecstasy on the side of BDD, but it gets KT the Baron, and Kingzone DragonX's first mistake is compounded because remember, in this fight, no summoners, no flashes to flash away from the knockup. Watching the replay here, it's on to Tucson and Def. Tucson joins the party, Urgot as well. If you have your summoners, you're not hit by that knockup. But the knockup ends the story for the side of Kingzone.
Yep, all of those flashes being on cooldown certainly is what helps KT out. They'll take their first dragon after taking down that Baron, and what it does is, you know, BDD may not have that Infinity Edge, but he holds them in the air for so long that piercing light right over the top. The culling gets to full channel into the Kingzone squad. The team fight comp that we talk about for KT just working to an absolute T that last fight, but now 5 members are looking for Smeb. Blade of the Ruined King goes down, but the choo-choo train has left the station. Things are going to be okay. So they're trying to get this pressure down, but 2 waves being pushed. There is a double cannon wave, and BDD is just running it straight up the bottom lane. Mid lane is now occupied by the rest of KT.
Siege comp with Baron, how can you beat it? Siege comp against Baron, well, you're getting split to death by BDD, level 16 in the side lane. Ash's recall was delayed as well, but soon should be grouped. They get so much standing gold here. KT needed all this gold just to get even when it comes to the overall goal because Kingzone was so smart about min-maxing their turret plates in the early game.
Yeah, I love that, that is all the turret plates that has kept Kingzone even in this game. Shows exactly how important it is to play out that early game as best as possible or as defensive as possible if you want to try and scale.
It's kind of a fun thing because it makes Siege comms and smart macro in the early game more viable because in the previous meta, you're down 5,000 gold and the teamfight comp can choose all their options. Now, you're even, and suddenly the game is competitive after the Baron buff does go away.
Well, you can see the heart monitor of a gold graph here for KT versus Kingzone. Just one of the things that we were expecting from this series. We knew that it was going to be closer because these two teams very desperate for finding their first match victory. KT managed to get one game off Hanwha, but that is the only good news story that they have. I'm going to try and bring this one home. Certainly more opportunities for Kingzone, but they need to utilize the map control that they've been able to build for themselves since the beginning of this game and get picks, make use of their comp, because proactivity is what they need and what they've been struggling to find so far in the first week of the LCK 2019.
The only time I've seen a Yasuo comp in recent memory lose in this sort of scenario is, I believe, Griffin versus Kingzone DragonX, and might have actually been a different match. It was in the Worlds qualifiers where basically every Yasuo Q was flashed away from, every knock-up was flashed away from. You need your flash to get away from the synergy.
Free hitting here on the top side. I think the ultimate
Smeb's
didn't
dead.
actually land there, but Smeb is going to go down. Zombie Scion. Not a lot he can do here as now KT have to run for the hills because as soon as one goes down, that means the dominoes can start falling here for Kingzone.
Yeah, they don't want to try to reload with a multi-man knock-up. They'll just give up the first death and back away. That means they lost the Baron buff. Can't be wielded to break the base. It was a catch-up Baron from KT. But Barons come faster. Elder Dragons come faster. And how can Kingzone get the ward coverage they need to poke before a team fight starts? Now that's GA on the Yasuo.
Yep, very close to picking up that Infinity Edge as well. First three items are done as, Deft manages to get the concussive blows. And Smeb, even through the Gargoyle Stone Plate, not enough, and Twosome blocking the ultimate means that he has no way of getting it.
Very smart positioning there. Same mechanic against Gragas to stop him from body slamming over a wall, to stop the Scion from ulting away. So good stuff there. On the side of Kingzone, gold lead for Kingzone. Feels irrelevant. 2,000 gold, but the Baron throw is the thing that really allows KT to be very close in this game. We're suddenly super competitive at 32 minutes in a way that we haven't been too far so much on the new meta.
And it's something that you've spoken about before as well, but having compositions that have different win conditions and different ideologies of how to get the game done. Kingzone want to find those picks, get that vision and take things one at a time, whereas KT want to split push until they group for a team fight and wipe you out with all of their AoE, CC, and damage.
Problem now is, though, that Kingzone need multiple members to start the trend of getting the sort of wards they need to actually be able to fight, because they are outcomped in a true 5v5 from the side of KT, but they've lost so much vision control because of the last couple of settlements going the way of KT Rolster that now you're popping a sweeper much more defensively and not getting maximum spotting of wards in this way. So they need Rascal and Kaz, maybe even to throw in Twosome to get the wards down. And then one body slam, ultimate from the heavens, and it undoes all your good work. So it's definitely deck stacked against Kingzone without the game being decided for KT.
I want to talk about Deft, though. He's got the Infinity Edge built up already. The QSS is there, and he built a new stopwatch towards that GA. It's going to be more difficult to just lock down the Ashe, as the last breath even isn't going to be able to keep him CC'd for long enough because you can QSS out of that into the stopwatch if you want to. Kingzone will be just trying to hope to God that Deft can carry in these fights, and he does have the items to do so now.
Read is, though, that the backline threat on KT is so big if Score gets the ultimate. If you get the cask, which again has a very large hitbox for the last breath, then it feels like all the dominoes fall just as quickly as they did for Kingzone that first fight won by KT. If you can get a pick, though, then again, things are good for Kingzone. So we're really looking for Zoe versus Gragas in a team fight in terms of which of those really big team fighting impacting abilities like that initial burst of the Paddle Star or the Trouble Bubble hit, or whether it's just the cast that dominates for score.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about who is going to pull the trigger first, and proactivity is something we've mentioned many times, feeling like a buzzword at this stage.
We got plenty of them, Atlas. We're all about the buzzwords.
But Kingzone really do need to actually make something happen themselves. They need to find that pick, find the Baron, and then try and break open the base. That's obviously what they want to do with a composition like this. However, haven't been able to find themselves the vision or the positioning to do so. Now waiting around this mid lane, wanting to lock someone down. Score would obviously be the ultimate target.
The summoners are up here for Kingzone, the better chance they have in this game. Flashes being down, as we already saw. KT's comp feasts on it. So much more reliable when there's no summoner. They're starting onto the Baron. They've got a lot of vision in this area. I think KT have to react.
Yep, Score running pretty damn quickly as now the train has left the station. In he goes as BDD gets exhausted to begin this one. Kingzone haven't actually offered too much back here as Disdain is used, but Rascal's still going to get taken down, and now Tucson running for the hills. Deft trying to get the auto attacks down, but Gango flashes on top of him. It's a double kill for BDD as the Lantern Ride is going to continue the party. Pawn's going to go down. It's the Guardian Angel for BDD. So much of his health comes back, and now look at the bottom lane. Kingzone's bottom lane in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, just waiting to die at the end of the fight, and Deft is going to get crushed by Smeb, his former teammate.
The 2v5 is real at the end. Thanks for the zoom in there. TPs are down, and KT Rolls just want to end the game before Kingzone can respawn.
Yep, Smeb just makes his way down towards the bottom side of the map with that summoner spell. Will break open the base, and everybody else is just beelining towards this mid lane inhibitor turret. KT just want to continue it. It's the bottom lane. That's all they need. They just need a few minions. They can tank things up with their gigantic Scion. And this should be the end of the game, unless Cuz can do something. I mean, Rascal's death timer not too long either.
Let's watch it. It is 5 members of KT.
Yeah, they've got a lot of damage as well. You can see that tower just evaporated as now Gango trying to get the damage across. Cuz is going to fall down, and Rascal should be soon to follow. Does go into the grinder. As there's the 4-man fear at the same time. Tucson doesn't quite land the ultimate, but Gango has to go so far to get on top of that lantern. He's still burning down. Last tick, not enough. And Kingzone will be able to defend their base if Smeb will eventually go down. Teleport here from Deft actually towards the top side as they're trying to get more back, and there we go. Pawn gets the ace, and Kingzone, it's their turn to try and rush towards the base.
Double TP to at minimum get an inhibitor here. Death timer's pretty long, 25 seconds on the Gragas. I assume that was just picked up off the floor there from Pawn. They're actually going to look at the Baron here. So they push out the minions, and they're going to take the Baron. So no inhibitor. Let's watch the replay here. Creative fight. It's actually just BD saying, I just want the armor penetration. I don't have to worry about the combo, and then chasing in the rest of the fight with the E here is BDD. Gango's the one at the start to define it, though. He's so powerful after he QS's in to flash in for as much damage onto Deft as possible. He doesn't kill Deft instantly, but everyone can go into melee range with all the cards falling like a house of cards on the side of Kingzone. They don't end the game on this push because Urgot's Fear from Beyond Death, which was missing every time in week number 1, hits on 4 members and delays the end from the side of KT.
Yep, does mean that now Kingzone will be able to pick up the Baron most likely. Can't actually see it here because we do have the replay still running, just watching Kingzone tidy up their base. But honestly, it's some definitely interesting play on both sides. Not exactly flawless League of Legends going on here, but it's certainly exciting, and still, we don't know who's going to win. Kingzone now with 2 inhibitors down and a very bare Nexus, but they do have the rotating Baron buff around them. A minute to go before the Elder can be contested.
And they need that Baron Atlas. They don't have summoners, and that means the reliability of KT's initiation goes close to 100%. Feels like there's really no ability to repel the CC train that KT will be unleashing very shortly. We'll see if they choose to fight against Baron. I think it's not the worst choice here. I think they feel like they're in a really strong position. Remember, it is a naked Nexus. No Nexus turrets up. 2 inhibitors are down. KT say, well, let's take an easy objective first and fight fire with fire. They want their 2 Drake Elder, which spawns in about 30 seconds, and Kingzone just can't walk up to actually put down the vision.
No, it's too many super creeps heading towards their base, as well as you can see BDD. He shoved the mid lane forward, and there's now a super creep on that bottom side, a little bit closer here to Kingzone. A little bit of respite was built up, though, as Def did clear out the last wave on the bot lane. So we'll see whether they do find their opportunity for a fight. Rabbiden's Death Cap done here for Pawn. The Curial Scimitar there as well, just waiting for the GA, and then Deft has his 6 items on this Ashe completed. And they've got minion waves now just funneling in over and over again. Kingzone will have a little bit more money, but is it going to be able to contend with this 2 Drake Elder? Not entirely sure, because KT's team fight we've already seen so many times. Doesn't matter how far behind they are. If it works, it works.
Hard to see a final item GA changing things for Deft, but at least it is an extra thing to consider. The other side of KT pushing in here, but showing due respect the side of Kingzone.
Look, Cuz not going to blow the Ragnarok. Not a lot to get here on the bottom side of the map. They do just want to move towards this Nexus, and Kingzone have to start a fight before they get there, because it may just go down inherently as they're just fighting each other.
Too risky to play 3 lanes, the trouble bubble hits, and suddenly your whole push might be delayed multiple minutes, so top lane goes begging. This particular game from KT that can't push 3 lanes at once. Turning on to Smeb here, this is going to be 5 people.
Yeah, trouble bubble is going to land, but the train is going to be used to leave. Stuffable Onslaught used defensively is exactly what Kingzone want here, because it's what's been their problem for the majority of this game. Okay, there's the wind wall, nicely done, but Gango does use the QSS.
Does relieve a lot of pressure, Atlas, just getting the ult out of mid lane, and then the other 4 having to back away while the top lane is pushing out, or at worst in parity for the side of Kingzone.
Only a minute left on the Elder Drake as well. They've waited it out really nicely. Baron, only another 13 seconds to go, but Kingzone was certainly on the back foot. They've got an open Nexus. They weren't pushing anything. So it does work in their favor to get rid of these cooldowns.
But with offset and longer timers, remember that Baron and Elder spawn every 6 minutes, and the durations are long. Real chance you get one, you get both, because you have that buff as mid lane.
Yeah, Tucson has to flash, gets out of the way of the hook there as well. Doesn't quite pick the juke to Snowflower, so that is going to be Tucson surviving, but both of his cooldowns now up. Wonder how many of the spellbook charges he's got to try and refresh any of these, and he does go back to the exhaust.
Flash not as high value for Tucson once the true grouping phase hits, which is now. Can just stay next to allies. We often see bot lane Broms. I remember Core JJ sitting on cleanse, heal, cleanse, exhaust for a lot of the game. He's just backing up Ashe as much as he can, but they've actually gotten out of the base with no Nexus turrets. This is hard to do, but no 3-lane pressure from KT allows Kingzone to make this 5v5. It's here, Smeb.
Yeah, the train does come in now. It's going to land onto just Rascal, but that's not the target that they want. Once again, Tucson throws his ultimate into a wind wall. That is not what you want, and KT still are so incredibly healthy. Pawn portal jumping to try and get himself around, but they do decide just to take down the Urgot with the last breath. Gango in trouble as the Paddle Stars come through, and Kingzone are still in amongst this fight. The flash through from Pawn, but he's unable to connect onto Gango in the backline. Snowflower in trouble, and now it's the Ashe who has to deal with all of the low health members, but they're finally falling. The damage is still here, and Deft picks up 2. 1 goes over to Pawn, who's now having a field day. Gango is in vision as BDD, does use the cleanse to get himself out of the way. And now they have to go for this 2 versus 2. It's mid laner and AD for both sides. And there's the wind wall. That could be the trouble now as BDD's playing nicely.
He's in again!
Does have another ultimate, but Deft gets the cheeky auto, and Gango now finds himself 1 versus 2 and trying to get rid of these minion waves. This game is so incredibly close. It's been crazy, it's been weird, but damn, it's been exciting as Gango finally goes down, and that's the ace for Kingzone.
Unbelievable. Kingzone able to win this against this team fight, and a lot of it is because of poke at the start, getting Gango low. Smeb comes in, no last breath yet. Like you say, Tucson's ult is wasted, but Rascal, obscenely tanky as we know. He's still buying time, he's still finding positioning, and notice where Deft and Pawn are. They're over a wall, no damage coming onto them from KT. So in the backline, the poke onto Gango is very relevant here.
That one Paddle Star was so important as well.
Pawn can't get an assassination, but low health bars when they finally get the first target. Notice that there was so low threat onto Deft, he cleanses and then is hitting multiple people. It's pray it, Worlds all over again with the ability to frontline here. So all the beef was sacrificed from KT just to gap close and get the damage in, and by the end, Gango's out of the fight and BDD can't fight 1v2. Don't tell him that. He tried real damn hard.
Yeah, Pawn unfortunately unable to find the Paddle Star as BDD sort of surprised him there. The last breath looked damn cool, but Deft still had his Guardian Angel and everything. He wasn't going to go down there as Kingzone. You can see some relief on Acorn's face, but not enough. The anxiety still showing through as we've still got the game going. It's 9,000 gold to lead, and I don't even feel like Kingzone are likely to win.
They're fighting against it, but credit to them. That was an outplay there. Deft Vintage Deft with that particular
And he's
team
now
fight
6
there.
items, no boots, Papa. That is going home, getting himself the Phantom Dancer.
No boots, no flash against this comp,
Oh,
but
man.
he needs to do it. He needs to be the hard carry here. Still has the Guardian Angel that was not blown in the previous fight. His positioning levels above Gango, his replacement on KT. It's only game number 1, but you can see how important it is, both for their seasons and against their old orgs, for these players to pop off.
Yep, Trouble Bubble not going to land. The arrow does hit, though. His score might get picked off. The autos are there, and Tucson is the one that secures it. Kingzone, they finally found their pick and now want to take down the base.
Dead time is a minute. What else can they get here? Can they just try to end? KT will have to all in to stop it.
Yep, the culling's going to come in, but that's not going to kill any of these minions as he has to get himself the hell out of there. Cuz still throwing the undertows through, and look at the damage onto these structures.
They're going to have to try something now.
Yep, Nexus turrets are going to be the next to go down as Smeb has such a huge health bar, but who damn cares? A Snowflower lands the Q, but it's just not enough. The last breath is onto 3 members, but he's just going to get blown up. Rascal flashing forward. In goes Cuz as well as Gango gets soloed out by the jungler, and I don't know how it happened, but Kingzone came back from the brink, came back from a Nexus under fire and 2 inhibitors down, and win game 1.
Kingzone in the clutch, get it done, but oh, was it close against KT Rolls. They thought they'd had it. They rushed at that Nexus, but the Nexus doesn't go down, and then Kingzone, 2 different skirmishes in a row, outplay KT Rolster and find the game 1 victory. The action in this series is levels above what we could have expected, and both these teams desperate for their first match win.
And you could feel that desperation in how that game played out as well. I was on the edge of my seat throughout the entire thing, watching Kingzone finally find the pick that they were looking for. It took them 40-odd minutes to get there, but once it happened, the game was over.
And it was nice to see Deft deliver on what we remember. That was some EDG, Samsung, Blue
man.
Deft going on in that team fight. Epic team fighting from him to salvage what looked like an unwinnable position for the side of KT. Unlosable position for the side of KT, unwinnable for the side of Kingzone. Man, that was a really exciting game. KT, you have to say, the one thing that struggled the most with was the fact they couldn't push that 3rd lane. Even though they had 2 inhibitors down and a naked Nexus, they could just never move that map spot up, because first Smeb gets caught, then Score gets caught, and the game ends in the clutch.
And it felt like both of these teams' proactivity was not something that they were able to find in a lot of stages in this game. It felt like only Smeb was the one capable of pulling a trigger on both sides. Out of 10 players, it was Smeb that was able to go in time and time again until Deft pulled the trigger on the out of position Score and finishes the game off. I don't know whether this was because of not necessarily having the vision available, not having the opportunities presenting to them, but I think both of these teams needs to try and pull the trigger like a lot of these young teams have been able to do. It's why a lot of our other games with all of these new teams in the LCK are going so much faster, because they're just not scared to go in.
KT and Kingzone played week 1 of the LCK with nameplates off. All those legacies meant nothing. One nameplate is activated here. You know that Def will win MVP for this game, and he looked his old self. Kingzone needed.
Yep, and also there's going to be a slight change-up as well. Just a little bit of a heads-up, guys. It's going to be Zenit subbing in here for KT as well. So a different AD carry, and I want to see the Sivir come back, because playing Sivir against Deft, that feels real spicy to me.
We didn't see the Draven, but the Lucian worked till it didn't. The late game team fighting more difficult for Lucian. He made some mistakes, Gango. The poke out in that Deft team fight was pretty pivotal. I don't know how much it changes though, Atlas, but we'll find out soon.
Yeah, exactly right. So we are going to have a look at the damage numbers. Gango, like you say, did a lot of damage, but look at Deft and Pawn. 40,000 damage and 37K.
That's the biggest number we've had all season now. Also, I believe the longest game we've had all season. This one crested 40 minutes here. Really exciting game. I think KT will be kicking themselves they couldn't get that 3rd inhibitor down to make it unsalvageable, because Kingzone were fighting with a siege comp out of their base after having no Nexus turrets and 2 inhibitors down. And mostly that doesn't happen in games, because inevitably you do the checklist, the 3rd turret, the 3rd inhibitor goes down, and it becomes, well, if you team fight, Winion's going to do the job. Winions couldn't do it. Kingzone put up a big upset victory, especially with where the game was.
Yep, exactly right. And also that Sion being caught out at the very end, I felt like that was going to be it. That was going to be it. KT should have been able to take it there, but Kingzone found pick after pick. That was 2 of them, and that was the game over. They'd set themselves up with a good early game. So guys, game number 2 coming up right after the break.